got the ladies on. And there's a lot of questions.
Believe it or not, I actually chose Taylor Swift. I'm a fan. I have always been a curious kid. I was one of those irritating children who, when I came over to your house to play with toys, I would rather play with your older siblings or go and sit with the parents and listen to their conversations. When I was 10, I taught myself to code. I have no idea why my parents got me an internet-connected computer. What they thought I was doing, I don't know. At 13, I taught myself how to play guitar. At 16, I booked a meeting with my headmaster at school and sat down in front of him and said, "Mr. Edie, I'm really bored. School is boring." And he looked at me and said, "Give it 2 years. When you're in matric, we'll have this conversation again." And he was right. I was not bored in matric. My mom is a typical Greek mother, and she likes to tell everyone, whether it's true or not, I don't know, that when I was really, really little, I was walking and talking before other kids. And whether that's true or not, I don't know, but I haven't shut up since. And it's because I'm curious about the world and everything in it. And humanity is curious, right? We're curious by nature. Proof of that is that I'm standing on a stage with a screen that looks like this. We take this stuff for granted. For me, living in 2020 is like living in a magical time. And the example that I can think of right now that really makes me believe we live in the future is Spotify. So you sit in front of your TV and you hear a song that you know kind of. You open the Shazam app and it listens to the song. It tells you what song it is. It gives you a Spotify link that you click on. It opens up Spotify and from the heavens beams down into your phone and then streams into your ears, with most of us now with wireless earplugs. That is magic. And it's magic because we're curious. Humans are curious, and because we have farming and space travel and all sorts of interesting things. So today I'm here to talk to you about the curiosity catalyst, the thing that we take for granted that actually makes us what we are. And I'm not talking about this kind of curiosity. These are curious looking people, right? These are all Guinness World Record holders who have done some crazy, silly, curious thing like have a bazillion bees on them. I'm talking about curiosity like this. This is a kid called Joe Whale. Joe was in kindergarten and his teacher shouted at him for doodling these doodles on his page instead of doing the work allocated to him in primary school. So his mom heard this and Instagrammed this photo of Joe doodling. And a restaurant in their neighborhood loved the doodle so much that they called the parents and got Joe to come in and decorate their walls. It took Joe 12 hours and multiple trips, but his parents didn't squash his curiosity. They embraced it. And they let Joe experience the world in the way that he was experiencing it. This is the kind of curiosity that I'm talking about. People like this guy, Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin invented or came up with the theory of evolution and natural selection. But I can tell you what he didn't do. He didn't wake up one day and go, you know what, I'm going to be innovative. I'm going to come up with the theory of evolution. No. Charles Darwin was obsessed with marine invertebrates. He studied them obsessively. He went to literally the ends of the earth to study all sorts of different creatures. He followed his obsession and his curiosity to a point that he recognized a trend that eventually became natural selection. Charles Darwin didn't set out to be innovative, because my premise is you cannot set out to be innovative. You can follow your curiosity until the end result is innovative. I want to talk to you about another guy. This guy's name is Werner Vossmann. He is a doctor, or was a doctor in Berlin in 1929. And one day, he thought to himself, I wonder if the artery in my arm is connected to my heart. So he took a catheter and stuck it in his arm and threaded the catheter through his artery in his arm up into his shoulder until it hit his heart. He was awake at the time and was wondering if it would kill him. It didn't. So Dr. Vossmann walked to the radiologist, a colleague of his, and said, sorry, could you just take an x-ray of me, please, to prove that my artery is connected to my heart? And that's the x-ray. That is the actual x-ray of his heart with a catheter in it. That changed the way we understand our hearts. It changed heart surgery forever, because one guy was super curious about whether his artery would hit his heart. That is an astounding leap forward for humanity. This is the kind of curiosity that we should be promoting in our lives as personal and professional beings. And today is the time to do that. As I mentioned before, living in 2020 is magic. Wikipedia was invented 19 years ago and is translated into 309 different languages around the world. Any piece of human history or knowledge that you want is in your pocket right now. You have no excuses to Netflix and chill when you're curious about something in the world. Every piece of information is available to you. And there's been research that just illustrates that in the business setting, curiosity leads to a lot of interesting outcomes. Fewer decision-making errors, more innovation, reduced group conflicts, more open communication between your teams, and better team performance are all results of actively promoting curiosity in your workplace. You guys know what confirmation bias is. You have an opinion, I believe the grass is green, and then you seek facts to back up that opinion. Promoting curiosity in the workplace prevents your teams from existing in a world of confirmation bias. It helps them challenge their own beliefs and find actual facts that try and break their beliefs. They hold strong opinions weakly. 200 employees were recently surveyed across multiple industries and multiple companies, and each of those was split down the middle, so 100 and 100. The first group was given an SMS every 2 days that promoted curiosity in their day. Hey, what are you going to do today to be curious? The other group, the other 100, were given an SMS that was motivational but not promoting their curiosity. At the end of a 4-week period, the 100 people who were forced or told to be a bit more curious scored significantly higher on a survey around innovation in their workplace and the actions they took every day to be more innovative on a day-to-day basis. In another survey, 3,000 employees were taken into a survey across America, and only 24% of 3,000 said they were curious about anything in their job. 24%. As you sit there, think about the work you do every day. Does it make you curious? Does it spark anything in you? That same group of 3,000 people said that 70% of them believed that there were barriers in their workplace to allow them to be curious. And we're going to talk about these barriers. So my premise is that innovation exists in conjunction with curiosity. And we believe that businesses like these all died because they weren't innovative. Polaroid, Blockbuster, Stutterfords. You guys remember Stutterfords? You notice they're not around anymore. Yeah. Radio Shack, Atari, and Alta Vista. For you geeks who were very early on in the geek world, Alta Vista was the search engine before Google. Yes, Google was not the search engine that existed in the world first. I have a funny story about Kodak and developing film. I studied journalism at Rhodes, and in my final year, this was about 2004, 2005, I studied photography. And in that year, Photoshop didn't exist. It wasn't a thing. So in my final year, I spent a whole year in a darkroom developing film that I'd taken photos of. The very next year, the course was scrapped and they introduced Photoshop. That's how quickly the world works. Then I had to go and learn Photoshop on my own. The degree that my parents paid for was completely irrelevant 1 year after I finished it. So the interesting thing about all these companies is we claim that they are going under or have gone under because they weren't innovative. I would argue that Netflix didn't kill Blockbuster. Blockbuster's lack of curiosity, lack of a safe environment, and lack of good team members to push them into the blue ocean is what killed them. Innovation is the end result of something else in the middle, and that thing in the middle is curiosity. And that word innovation, we're going to focus on a little bit now. It's the only word that I know of that strikes fear into the hearts of business leaders around the world, like these hyenas when they hear the word Mufasa. A little shake, you all know the movie, right? In a survey of 15 innovation experts around the world, they were all asked one really simple question. What is innovation? And can you guess? 15 different answers. Now, if the experts of innovation around the world have absolutely no cohesion on what they believe innovation is, how is it possible that your boss's boss's boss, who comes to you one day and says, we need to innovate, can explain to you what that means? And the problem is, innovation is not an action, it's an outcome. That's the issue that we're dealing with. Corporates are reactionary. Your businesses are seeing things in front of them and reacting. And I call this reaction a whackavation. They're playing whack-a-mole with innovation. They're going, oh, here's a problem. Oh, let's find a solution for this. Okay, wait, that didn't work. Let's go to this one. Okay, hold on, that didn't work. Let's go to this one. This is how your businesses are innovating. There is a systemic problem because innovation is not an action, it's an outcome. The action is to change the way your system works, to change the culture that you're breeding so that the people in your business know that it's safe to be curious and come to a solution. For me, corporates are like bulls in a china shop. They're trying to find all these new plates to eat off of, but they thrash around and break the plates because they systemically have not understood that it's about curiosity, not innovation. What they actually need to be doing is turning themselves into learning organizations. Now, we're going to do a quick crash course in systems theory and systems thinking here. Learning organizations are studied in depth by a guy called Peter Senge, and he bases this off systems thinking. Systems thinking is really simple, right? Every system is made up of a whole collection of things that all need to interact together to successfully maintain that system. If one of those things changes too dramatically or breaks down, the system breaks down. So to combat that, Peter Senge proposes that organizations and individuals need to be learning organizations. And it is what it says on the tin. A learning organization promotes learning inside of their organization. That's it. And as humans, we need to be doing the same things in our own systems. We need to understand that the world is moving in a fast and dramatic way. The jobs that our kids are studying at university are likely not going to exist in 10 or 15 or 20 years. The jobs that they will be doing don't exist today. So things are moving too rapidly for you to just stop learning at the end of university. There is something called lifelong learning. If you go onto websites like Udemy or Treehouse, for $20 a month, you can learn thousands of courses and skills. I decided to learn the Rubik's Cube 2 years ago, and I watched a YouTube video for 15 minutes every day for 10 days. Now I can solve a Rubik's Cube. That's it. It's not a special skill. It's taking time to become a learning organization in your own self and in your businesses. And think about the companies you work in as you sit here. Are you in a learning organization? Is your leader promoting that kind of thing? Unlikely. So I'm about to launch a podcast, and one of the companies that I interviewed was the CEO, one of the guys I interviewed was the CEO of a company called Onfido. Onfido is a £100 million business. That is a metric, massive ton of money. They do exactly what they're showing you in that picture. They do the KYC, the Know Your Customer. When you upload your ID in the selfie photo, they are the people checking your ID against a massive database in the world. So the founder, Hussein, said to me that they hire people based off lifelong learning as a criteria. Is that person willing to come into the business and obsess over the problem and learn consistently to be better at it? They believe in lifelong learning so much that they have what's called the Onfido University. They have peer-to-peer learning sessions every week, and they get experts in to help their team get better at what they do every single day. Onfido wants you to be better at what you do. Good organizations want you to think. They don't want you to stop thinking. They want you to push the boundaries. They want you to be better at what you do, not worse. These are learning organizations, and they adapt. Things that learn exceptionally well for me are young creatures, puppies, babies. I love the way that babies interact with the world. Everything is new. You've all seen those memes online with the baby eating the lemon. They have no idea what they're in for, but they shove that lemon in their face and they grimace and it's amazing. And they're like, oh, this was amazing, let's put it back in there. I recently watched one where the baby ate garlic. Not such a fun outcome for that baby. But the thing that I love the most is, I don't know if you guys remember it, I don't, but when you learn to walk, there's a very specific way that you go through processes of walking, right? And I've coined this the bum shuffle. So the way you learn to walk is you pull yourself along the ground. That was my bad. I was warned about that. You pull yourself along the ground. Let's wait for it to load. And then you shuffle along the floor. And this baby's going to do that hopefully in a second. And then you shuffle and you run into things, and then you stop and you have a little cry. And over time, you learn to crawl, and you bump your head into a table, and you have a little cry, and you try again. And then you take your first steps and you fall over and your parents are super excited and they Instagram that you're walking because it's like the first time anyone's ever walked in the world, and they promote you to get up and try it again, right? They embrace that failure and they get you to do it again. This is how humans develop. Imagine if businesses develop this way. and continually push themselves to the next iteration, but we don't. Fundamentally, businesses get to a point where they stop and they focus on the bum shuffle. All they do is bum shuffle. You become a bum shuffling expert. You find more efficient ways to bum shuffle, and you exist in a world of bum shuffling. Have I said bum shuffle enough for everybody? It's made us all feel comfortable, cool. So this is where we end up, right? We end up in a world where it's all about efficiency, it's all about profit, it's all about driving your business to do more in a shorter period of time and not evolving. But what happens when your competitor learns to walk? What happens when your competitor can bum shuffle faster than you? Then you're stuck. And that's the moment when your boss's boss says, Nick, you better start innovating. Otherwise, we're in trouble. So let's talk about why curiosity is discouraged in the workplace, because it is. And if you are in a big corporate, it's likely that you are given a 9-to-5 job, you're given work to do, and you're not promoted to think. And most of the time, leaders will hate me saying this, but it's due to bad leadership that we are not promoted to think. Leaders have an uncomfortable experience of their business. They don't want exploration. They're trying to avoid that. They're trying to seek efficiency because that's how they're judged. They're judged on quarterly results, they're judged on profit margins, they're judged on shareholder buybacks, they're judged on things that you aren't affected by. You're judged on those things. And again, I want you to think about the leaders you interact with every day. Which kind of leader are they? Are they that kind of leader? Or are they the good kind of leader who promotes your thinking, who gives you the chance to experiment and fail, who says to you, are you thinking outside of the box? Did you get your work done as quickly as you can so you can do new things? We've all heard of Google's 20% time. They embrace that as a cultural, systemic level. Good leaders also do something, they get rid of the assholes. And this is a key thing, right? When you hire people, you often hire the best people, but sometimes they're the worst for your business because they don't work with everyone else. The best leaders see those people and get rid of them so that culturally your business can push forward in the right way. The other thing that we get judged on is attendance versus performance. And this one absolutely baffles me. We're expected to be at work 5 days a week, 9 to 5, every day, doing the same thing in and out. And heaven forbid you miss a day, you get slammed. It doesn't make sense, but practically it works. The problem is we're again judged on quarterly results. We're judged on being present. The KPIs are wrong. And to be frank, I even hate the phrase KPI. My first job, people kept saying to me, what are your KPIs? What are your KPIs? And I had absolutely no idea what KPI stood for. I was 21. So eventually I got the guts up to ask, and they were like, your key performance indicators. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. That day, I learned to just ask the dumb questions. Whatever's in your head, just ask the dumb questions. You know what I think is unfortunate is the things that do get judged on attendance and consistent work are robots. Robots get judged in that way. Humans work in upwards and downwards ways. We're curious and inspired at 9 p.m., and then we aren't at 6 a.m. sometimes. And sometimes on the weekend, I end up writing 3,000 words of my book. And then on Monday, I beat myself up because I can't sit down at my laptop. These robots in this picture are incredible. We're worried about what's coming in the future. Let's talk about what's here right now. These are Amazon's warehouse robots. Amazon's warehouses are built in what's called the chaos theory. And these robots help that chaos theory exist. So to give you an example, in February it's Valentine's Day, so these robots prior to that will reorganize, think about this, the robots will reorganize football fields of inventory to present the humans who pick and pack the orders with the most likely purchased items for that week. The robots are telling the humans where to go to get the products that are more than likely going to be bought. We need to be judged on performance, not attendance. Robots need to be judged on attendance. This is a fundamental problem with curiosity in the workplace. So we've spoken briefly about short-term targets, the quarterly results. There is a move in places like Silicon Valley and in the UK and Europe to get rid of quarterly results. It's a very slow process, but they drive the wrong kind of incentives. They drive the kind of incentives that led Wells Fargo, and if you don't know who Wells Fargo is, they're the biggest bank in the world, or they were at some time, based out of America in California. Wells Fargo gave their staff in every branch the target of getting 8 new bank accounts opened every day. In a town of 5,000 people, if that bank has got 5 workers, they've covered the entire population of that town in 120 days. Short-term targets lead to theft and fraud. So what the Wells Fargo staff started to do was make up accounts. They started to fake social security numbers because the CEO wanted to report quarterly that his share price could go up because they were opening more accounts than anyone in the world. Eventually, they got found out and were fined billions of dollars. How many billions? 4 to 6 billion. You know what they earn in a year? 20. So knock on the knuckles for them. They don't care. So short-term results drive people to be judged in the wrong way. It doesn't promote efficiency. So let's talk about efficiency, right? Companies want to find the most efficient way to bum shuffle. Unfortunately, that is not the best way to promote long-term results in your company. And the heart and the background of this image is really interesting to me. One of my favorite companies is Nando's. And I absolutely love listening to Robbie Brosen talk. One of my favorite quotes of his is he said, Nando's' triumph was making every country believe that Nando's came from their country. So when you go to London, everyone in England thinks that Nando's was started in England. And the same in Portugal and the same everywhere else, right? So Robbie Brosen and his team wanted to help their staff as they expanded feel the Nando's ethos every single day. So he presented this problem to his team and said to them, come up with a solution. And so they did. The first thing they did was figure out exactly what the heart of Nando's was. And for Nando's, the heart of their brand is their peri-peri sauce. And every staff member who joins Nando's gets a new outfit. So what the team came back to Robbie with was called the Nando's Peri thread. And that heart is knitted out of the Nando's Peri thread. It's a cotton thread that is infused with the Nando's peri-peri sauce and knitted into every single shirt and item of clothing that a Nando's staff member receives when they first join the company. And the story is explained to them every time they're given this outfit. Now, the alternative to this would be, hey, we want to do some team building. Should we go and play some laser tag? That's how people normally solve the problem. Robbie Brosen let his team be curious. He didn't punish them for mistakes and failure, and he gave them a big problem to obsess over. And that's what they did until they came up with a solution that was appropriate. So one of the other major stumbling blocks to promoting curiosity in a company is the fear of failure. And South Africans are great at this one. We think we get one shot at everything. I don't know why that is. I've traveled all over the world and met with entrepreneurs who embrace failure like it's a triumph. But in South Africa, we fear failure as a stopping point. And I'm trying to get people to understand that failure is not an end point. Failure is a through point. It's something that you need to strive towards as quickly, cheaply, and efficiently as you can to learn the lesson at the failure and move beyond. Businesses that create a fear of failure are the ones that eventually crumble. If you don't let the smartest people in the best environment experiment without fear of recourse, you will not get the best results out. It's that simple. If people are fearful for their jobs, if they fail, they're not going to try. I don't define success as an avoidance of failure. I define success as getting up that one more time. Just one more time after the failure. And I can say that because I started my first business at 16, and between the ages of 16 and 26, I had 10 back-to-back failures. At the age of 26, I sold my first business. It took me 10 years of failures before I got to a success. So now that we've spoken about the negative stuff, how do you create a curiosity catalyst? Well, in my head, it's really simple. You need to firstly find the best people. And this is what I think the most interested, curious, and ambitious people are. They're curious and resilient. They're hungry, obsessive. They love failing. They're ambitious. They're dreamers, and they're inspired. You know what that sounds like to me? Startup founders. Startups are inherently curious and ambitious, and they want to fix the world. I read a great tweet from one of my favorite investors, Paul Graham, and he said, fundamentally, startups are not evil because they're solving problems that they have. And if you're solving your own problem, you're not trying to screw yourself over. You're trying to solve that problem so that everyone else who experiences that problem can also have a solution. So if you're going to try and find the best people and hire them, that's how you're going to set the tone for building the best kind of business. The problem comes in when you've got an established business and you've got people who've been working for you for 5 or 10 or 15 years, and they've been doing the same thing over and over again, becoming more and more efficient about it, and then all of a sudden you stop them and say to them, you know what, we need to innovate. What are we going to do? And this is when corporates do something called innovation theater. They set up an innovation lab. They spend a little bit of budget and a little bit of time to show their boss and their shareholders that they're pushing a little bit of innovation just enough innovation to scare away the people who want to push them for real innovation. Asking your existing staff, who have no idea that you've shifted your strategy, to do something like innovation is like asking a 1-year-old to run in the 100 meters with Usain Bolt. It's a different skill set, it's a different world, it's a different challenge. Shifting your business is not about doing theater. It's about fundamentally changing the way that your system works. And the kinds of people that I think are the kinds of people you should hire are like Mr. T. They're T-shaped individuals. They are jacks of all trades and the masters of one. I've spent most of my career feeling like I'm out of place, like I'm not a coder, I'm not a marketing person, I'm not a salesperson. I'm kind of a little bit of everything. And doing research for a book that I'm going to launch next year, February, on curiosity, I came across a phrase, and that phrase changed the way I think about humans forever. Expert generalists is the phrase. They are people who are jacks of all trades and masters of one. And these are some of the great examples. So I'll just highlight a few of them. Nassim Taleb is a famous writer. He doesn't just write on one topic. He is deep into thinking about finance and maths, philosophy, social sciences, legal theory, and everything in between. The stature of the old dude, I had to hark back to my Greek roots, is Aristotle. His writing covers metaphysics, poetry, physics, logic, music, theater, rhetoric, government, politics, biology, ethics, and zoology. He was not a single focused human. He changed the way we understand the world because he linked interesting and unique things together that no one else had ever seen. These are expert generalists who change the world. People like Paul Robson, who was a top left over there. He was a pro athlete. He was multilingual. He was an actor, a singer, a civil rights activist, a scholar, and a lawyer. We've been trained to finish school, become an accountant, and do that forever. That is not the world we live in. We live in a world of diverse skill sets where we can pull different things together and make links that didn't exist before. These are the kinds of people who obsess over problems. People like a guy called Trip Hawkins. I recently interviewed him. His company is called Electronic Arts. He was the founder and the first CEO. You guys know Electronic Arts? EA Sports, it's in the game. They created FIFA and all those amazing sports games that you play. So when Trip was 11 years old, he was sitting with his friends playing Dungeons and Dragons. And over time, they started to get bored with him. And they would hover over to the TV and just stare blankly into the screen. And TVs were quite new back then. So he said to himself, I don't understand. Dungeons and Dragons sets my imagination on fire. The TV is numbing my friends' brains. Why are they doing this? And there and then, in that moment, Trip decided that he needed to put the experience of Dungeons and Dragons, the board game, onto a TV. And at the age of 11 and 12, he developed a 10-year business plan, I'm not kidding you, to launch his company at the age of 22, that then became a billion-dollar business called Electronic Arts. Trip was an expert generalist who strung together art and math and science and development and engineering to build a company that no one had ever seen before, and he didn't even know the technology would exist when he started the company. Those people obsess over problems, so much so that they don't care if you think they're wrong or right. They just get it done. But part of the obsession is an experimentation, right? And experimenting is a core part of sparking a curiosity to make sure that you don't die in the long term. And I never ever thought I'd put Microsoft on a presentation of mine in line with experimentation and innovation. But the truth is, Microsoft's last 5 years have been absolutely incredible with their new CEO under the belt. Microsoft took 2,300 staff in Japan, and they gave them a 3-day weekend. And the results were astounding. At the end of the test, they had seen a 40% increase in the output of the staff. And I'm not talking about some willy-nilly representation of metrics. They saw a 40% increase in sales per person out of those 2,300 people. They also capped meetings to 30 minutes. They gave people the time to do their job when they were at work and gave them the freedom to think about their jobs when they were not at work. And that's how our brains work, right? If you are constantly one of those hustlers who works 24/7, 7 days a week, and you brag about it, you're in trouble. Because your brain needs downtime to think about the things that you've learned. It needs to put the macro picture together. And if you don't take a break, 3-day week sometimes, perhaps you're not going to get to the things that you need to get to. This study was an incredible move, but it probably only worked in Japan because they have an obsessive work culture. They will work 7 days a week, 24/7 if you let them. but giving them 3 days a week just sparked this change of sales. And so Microsoft took a risk, right? They could have failed, and if they had failed, they would have learned a lesson. So we've already spoken about failure, but it's important to re-emphasize this word. Failure is something that we shy away from, and the best leaders don't. They let you fail and they embrace it. A great example is going back to Onfido. In their company, not only do they have a learning culture, but they have an experimentation culture that does not shy away from failure. And the way they do this, the CEO told me, is anyone in their company can go to their line manager and ask for a small budget of $1,000 or $2,000 and experiment on something that will make their business different, better, or improve it in some way. And if that experiment fails, they move on and they pitch for the next one. But if it works, that staff member can justify for up to $500,000 to build a new product inside of their business and push the company to the next level. They have let the lower end of their business innovate from the bottom up by taking away that fear of failure and letting them push that curiosity to the next level. And they're not the only company that does this. This is an actual photo of 3M's office, headquarters. They wrapped their building in this phrase, curiosity is just the beginning. Do you guys know what 3M does? You know, everyone claims that you make sticky notes. I was the guy who invented sticky notes. They actually were the people who invented sticky notes and sticky tape and scotch tape. But the interesting story here is 3M actually started out as a sandpaper company. And in the early 1900s, one of their team, a guy named Richard Drew, was a lab assistant who part of his job was to go around and give new samples of sandpaper to potential clients. And one of his potential clients over a period of time was a car painting company. And at that time, in the early 1900s, two-tone paint jobs were all the rage. So what they would do is paint the car one color, white, and then they would use whatever stickiness was there to stick stuff to the car and paint over it so that they would get the second color. And more often than not, when they ripped the sticky stuff off, the paint would come off and they'd have to start again. So month after month, he would drop off sandpaper examples and see if he could sell them more sandpaper. And eventually he was like, man, this problem's not going away. So he went back to his lab and spent 2 years taking the adhesive that they used on the sandpaper and experimenting with it in his own time, in his free time. And eventually, Scotch tape was born. A tape that you can stick onto something and rip off without leaving this tape on the thing that you've stuck it on. We all think that Google was the first company to come up with 20% time. We'd be wrong. 3M in the 1970s gave their scientists 15% of their time for free every single day to come up with anything that they wanted. And they come up with things that change their business. This is why, systemically, 3M branded their building with curiosity is just the beginning. Because it's true. Innovation is not the start of anything. Curiosity is. That spark of thinking is the thing that makes us better and different. And they're not the only company, right? There's a company in Australia called Atlassian. It's a tech company. And they're commonly acknowledged to be the people who really pushed the idea of a hackathon. A very short-term way to innovate and push people's curiosity. Now hackathons are everywhere. Just took one company to give their staff the ability to work for 2 or 3 days in isolation and come up with ideas. That's an incredible way to go. So how do we breed this kind of person? Well, in my opinion, we don't do it in the current school system. We do it in the school system of Finland, and that is a beautiful picture of Finland. Finland has got a school system that is constantly rated in the top 3 in the world. Math, science, you name it. But they have a very unique school system. It is free to anyone who wants to go to school. It has shorter school days. They have no standardized testing. Students get to choose their curriculum, and teachers need to have a master's degree to be a teacher. And the key tenet of the school system in Finland is that no student should ever lead to a dead end. Imagine if our school system was like that. Imagine if at the age of 16, our school system gave you the choice to go into a vocational type of job, learn how to be a plumber or an electrician or a mechanic or an engineer, or they let you be a musician. And then that master's teacher gave you the ability to become the best artist that you could be and follow a career into becoming that thing forever. Imagine if our companies did that. Imagine if they hired you, not for a position, but because you were amazing. There is a company in America that hires people for the first 3 months and doesn't give them a title. They just let them join the company and see what the business is about. And they say to them, come, we believe you're the best at what you do, but see if you want to work somewhere else in the company. You're a developer, well, maybe you want to work in marketing for 4 months. They hire the best people and let those people grow into the business. They don't lock them down into a 9 to 5. They do what Joe's parents did. They let them explore their curiosity. They embrace it as something that's a valuable asset, not something to hide behind. The best organizations want us to be curious. They want us to be excited. They want us to find the next blue ocean billion-dollar idea. They don't want you to stand behind your desk. To do this, I call this the curiosity flywheel. And I've been talking about this for the last 30 minutes, and we're going to sum it up really simply. You have to hire the best people. You cannot give the worst people the freedom to screw around because they will. You have to get your hiring processes right. And I mean that down to the wire. And putting this talk together, and this is actually the first time I'm doing this talk in 2020, it was so poignant that I did it at Yoko. I have yet to meet a Yoko employee who doesn't fit this bill. They're all curious. They all love their job. They all obsess over the problem. And the thing that I love as a Yoko family member is Yoko's problem is not payments. Yoko is trying to obsess about how to make entrepreneurs better at what they do. And everyone in the company obsesses over that problem, and they get better at that every day. And then Yoko and companies like Yoko let people experiment. And if you don't let people experiment, they get bored. Smart people get bored very quickly. And if you're hiring the best people and you prevent them from experimenting and you punish them for failing, they're going to get bored and they're going to leave. And they're going to go to companies that are learning organizations. And then you have to embrace failure. And the key one for me that's the hardest for us all to do, because long-term thinking is difficult, is to think long-term. So all of us know Amazon by now. Jeff Bezos is the founder. He's the richest man in the world. He is a long-term thinker. He spent $40 million of his own money building a clock that will tick with the right time for 10,000 years. And he's buried that clock underneath his farm in Texas. He built that clock as an homage to thinking about the future. He is a long-term thinker. Amazon is the shining light of forgetting about profit in the short term, reinvesting it in innovation, pushing curiosity, and if failure happens, shifting and moving on. That's the way to build a business. And let me iterate this again. The road to innovation is paved with curiosity, not innovation. Innovation is not a thing. It's an outcome. The thing is curiosity, and we all have it. So I urge you to find your curiosity and dig into it. Watch less TV and read more. Go out and experience things, and then let your brain think about them, and then build stuff. So, thank you for giving me your time, and I really want you to be more curious.